What if human history isn't a straight line, but a memory with missing pages? Welcome back, traveler. Tonight, we drift through science. Imagine brushing dust from an ancient stone and finding a message carved not by us, but by hands long forgotten, belonging to a civilization erased so completely that only silence remembers them. The thought feels like a soft shadow stretching across time, unsettling, beautiful, and strangely comforting, as if Earth itself holds secrets it has been trying to whisper for ages. You're here now, in a quiet corner of the night, where the air feels slower, the darkness softer, and your breath settles into its own gentle rhythm. The world outside fades into stillness, leaving only the faint hum of your heartbeat and the low, comforting sense of being safe while drifting through hidden questions. Tonight, nothing asks for your effort, nothing demands conclusions. You're simply floating, wrapped in the calm of wondering what might have lived here before us. Earth's long history invites possibilities far larger than our timelines usually allow. The planet is over 4.5 billion years old, a span so vast that continents have shifted positions, oceans have appeared and disappeared, and entire ecosystems rose and fell long before our species took its first breath. In that immense sweep of time, it's not impossible to imagine that something advanced might have emerged and vanished without leaving obvious traces, erased by geology, pressure, heat, and the slow recycling of the crust itself. The idea stretches our imagination, but it also deepens our respect for Earth's hidden memory. If this kind of gentle, curious wondering brings you a moment of rest, I'm quietly grateful to share this corner of the night with you. Whether you leave a like, subscribe, or simply stay here listening, your presence adds warmth to this small space where we explore big questions softly. No rush, no noise, just quiet science drifting toward deeper understanding. And now, as you settle into this feeling of safety and slow curiosity, something begins to take shape in the dark. A soft thread stretching back through forgotten ages, inviting us to follow it into the hidden layers of Earth's past. Where the first whispers of this mystery begin to glow, there is something humbling about realizing how young we truly are. Not just as individuals, but as a species, a tiny flicker arriving at the end of an unimaginably long timeline. When you stretch your thoughts across the age of our planet, the mind softens, the noise quiets, and a gentle awe rises in its place. You begin to feel the depth of time like a slow ocean beneath you, steady and ancient, carrying stories far older than anything humans have ever written. Geologists estimate Earth to be around 4.54 billion years old. Modern humans, with our language, cities, and civilizations, have existed for only about 300,000 years, less than a blink in comparison. If Earth's entire history were compressed into a single day, all of human existence would fit inside the final half-second before midnight. Life has flourished, transformed, and vanished countless times before we appeared, leaving behind fossils, minerals, and chemical signatures buried deep in rock layers. Visually, it's like standing in front of a towering cliff face layered with colors, each stripe a chapter of Earth's memory. Some layers stretch vast and thick, recording millions of years of calm seas. Others are thinner, marked by volcanic ash or sudden extinctions. At the very top lies the thinnest layer of all, the one in which humans emerged. It's fragile, barely a whisper compared to the vast wall beneath it, and from that whisper arises a quiet realization: we are not the default form of intelligence on Earth. We are simply the current one. The planet has held billions of years of potential, and we arrived late to a story far older than our myths dare to imagine. Time itself is the first great clue that humbles the question of ancient civilizations. When a planet has endured for so long, the possibility space for what may have arisen and what may have disappeared grows wider. Earth's surface is not static. It shifts, melts, fractures, and rebuilds. Anything once standing on the crust long enough ago would be erased not by intention, but by geology. Scientifically, Earth's crust is recycled through a process called plate tectonics. Unlike the Moon or Mars, whose surfaces preserve their ancient scars, Earth continuously forms new crust at mid-ocean ridges and destroys old crust at subduction zones. Ocean floors vanish roughly every 200 million years. Continents drift, collide, erode, and reshape themselves. Entire landscapes that once existed have been ground into dust and folded back into the mantle. Visually, it's like watching a slow-moving tapestry, constantly being unraveled and rewoven. The threads shift positions, patterns dissolve and reappear, and no single arrangement lasts forever. What stood on one thread may vanish when the tapestry folds, replaced by something entirely new. And in that endless weaving lies a gentle thought. Permanence is an illusion on a planet that never stops changing. The ground beneath us is ancient, yet always in motion, carrying the possibility that previous stories were simply worn away. Another humbling truth emerges when you consider how rarely the Earth preserves evidence of anything. Fossilization is not common, it is exceptional. Only a tiny fraction of all organisms that ever lived left behind fossils. Hard structures preserve best, soft tissues almost never do. Even entire species can disappear without leaving a single recognizable trace. Scientifically, fossilization requires highly specific conditions: rapid burial, lack of oxygen, and mineral-rich waters. Most environments do not offer these. And for intelligent species, whose tools might be made of wood, fiber, or other degradable materials, preservation becomes even more unlikely. Over millions of years, erosion, chemical weathering, and tectonic forces erase nearly everything. Visually, this rarity feels like writing a message on a beach at low tide. The letters stay for a moment, maybe long enough to read, but the next wave washes them clean. The sand remembers nothing, even though the writer was undeniably there. And from that washed shore comes a philosophical echo. Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Sometimes it is only the rhythm of time doing what it always does. We also know that Earth has experienced several near-total resets. Cataclysms powerful enough to erase entire ecosystems have struck repeatedly, each one wiping the slate clean. If anything advanced existed in those forgotten expanses of time, their traces could have been swept away, burned, buried, or subducted deep into the mantle long before our species emerged to wonder. Scientifically, Earth has endured at least 5 major mass extinctions. The Permian extinction removed over 90% of life in the oceans. The Chicxulub impact ended the reign of dinosaurs in a geological instant. Volcanic outbursts like the Siberian traps transformed the atmosphere. These events reshaped continents and erased entire lineages from the fossil record. Visually, it is like staring at a vast forest that once burned completely, leaving only charred soil. New seedlings sprout, new trees rise, and centuries later, nothing in the landscape hints at the giants that once stood there. Extinction can be a form of forgetting. And in that forgetting lies a reminder. Civilizations, if they existed, would have been just as vulnerable as ecosystems. Catastrophe does not discriminate between species that crawl, species that fly, or species that think. Another gentle clue comes from microfossils and chemical traces buried deep in ancient rocks. Early life on Earth left behind isotopic signatures, not tools or buildings. These signatures persist for billions of years, etched into the chemistry of minerals. If an ancient civilization used energy, metals, or synthetic materials, Some chemical echo might remain, but it could be incredibly faint. Scientifically, scientists look for anomalies in carbon isotopes, unusual metal concentrations, or synthetic compounds that do not occur naturally. These traces can reveal industrial activity or biological changes, but they require technology and sampling that we have only recently developed. Much of Earth's crust remains unexplored on this level. Visually, these chemical whispers resemble faint footprints left on stone, ridges smoothed by rain, outlines softened by time. You can sense that someone walked there, though you cannot recognize the shape or intention of their steps. And from those softened footprints arises a quiet thought. The deeper we look, the more we realize how incomplete our knowledge truly is. Most of Earth's story lies buried far below our feet. Scale is another element that invites wonder. When we look at human civilizations, we measure time in centuries or millennia. Yet entire mountain ranges rise and fall on scales of tens of millions of years. Oceans open and close. Islands appear, vanish, and reappear in different shapes. In that slow rhythm, humanity feels impossibly brief. Scientifically, the Wilson cycle describes how supercontinents form and break apart over 500 million-year intervals. Continents collide, fuse into landmasses like Pangaea, then split apart into new configurations. Any civilizations that existed before these cycles would be buried beneath kilometers of rock, melted into magma, or dispersed into microscopic residues. Visually, it's like watching a painting dissolve into swirling colors, then reform into an entirely new image. The old picture is still part of the canvas, but its details are lost to the layers above it. And from that shifting canvas comes a philosophical clarity. The Earth forgets not out of malice, but out of movement. To be remembered, something must survive stillness, yet nothing on this planet is still for long. The vastness of Earth's past invites both humility and wonder. It doesn't require belief in ancient civilizations, only an openness to how much time allows. With billions of years at play, the possibility space becomes enormous. Whether anything advanced existed or not, the scale alone is enough to shift your perspective, letting curiosity breathe. And somewhere in that widened breath, a new question begins to shimmer at the edge of thought. A question that leads us deeper into the hidden possibilities waiting in the dark layers of Earth's forgotten eras. There is a certain awe that rises when you begin to grasp the vastness of geological time. Not the abstract version found in textbooks, but the lived awareness that this planet has held more eras, more forgotten worlds, and more silent transformations than our minds were built to imagine. When you sit with that idea long enough, you start to feel the ground beneath you soften, not physically but conceptually, as if it has become a doorway into depths you were never taught to consider. Scientifically, Earth's geological record is divided into eons, eras, and periods that span hundreds of millions of years. The Precambrian alone, covering the first 4 billion years of Earth's history, contains few fossils and almost no preserved landscapes. Rock layers from that time have been metamorphosed, subducted, melted, or eroded away. What remains is fragmented, like pages torn from a book and burned at the edges. This enormous span represents 85% of Earth's timeline, a nearly blank canvas in terms of complex evidence. Visually, the Precambrian is like an ancient mural painted on a wall that has been scraped, cracked, and repainted countless times. You can see hints of earlier images beneath the surface, but most details have been lost to pressure, heat, and time. Only faint outlines remain, whispers of worlds long gone. And from that eroded mural comes a philosophical whisper. Most of Earth's story is not missing because it was hidden. but because nothing lasts long enough to stand against deep time. Another element that invites wonder is how resilient life is, and how differently it has evolved across eras. Intelligent life, as we define it, is only one expression of evolutionary potential. Earth has seen life forms so alien to our own that they feel like inhabitants of another world entirely. This diversity hints that intelligence, too, might have arisen in ways we have not yet imagined. Scientifically, the Cambrian explosion, around 540 million years ago, produced a sudden burst of complex life forms with body plans unlike anything alive today. Some had 5 eyes, others moved on armor-plated limbs, still others floated like translucent ribbons through shallow seas. Many of these creatures left almost no descendants, disappearing without trace after a few million years. Evolution has never been linear, it has always been experimental. Visually, the Cambrian seas resemble a surreal dreamscape. Vibrant shapes drifting in blue-green light, shadows flickering behind delicate fins, unfamiliar bodies moving with slow grace through ancient waters. It feels like a landscape from another planet, yet it unfolded right here on Earth. And from that ancient dream comes a reflection. Earth does not limit itself to one form of complexity. What rose once may rise again in ways that do not resemble us. Another humbling truth emerges when we consider the Anthropocene bias. The assumption that advanced civilizations must leave behind remains recognizable to us. We expect skyscrapers, metal tools, plastics, satellites. But an intelligent species millions of years before us might have built with materials that degrade quickly, preferred organic technology, or lived in ways that leave almost no archaeological trace at all. Scientifically, erosion, chemical weathering, and biological recycling remove most traces of human activity within tens of thousands of years. A modern city, left untouched, would decay rapidly. Steel rusts, concrete breaks apart, plastics photodegrade, and biological organisms reclaim abandoned structures. After 1 million years, almost nothing recognizable would remain. After 10 million, there would be only chemical hints buried deep in sediment. Visually, imagine a grand city overtaken by moss, then soil, then forest, and finally stone. Buildings crumble into minerals, metals oxidize into dust, and even plastics decompose into microscopic fragments. Eventually, the land forgets the shapes entirely, replacing them with new landscapes. And from that gentle erasure comes a thought. Longevity is not guaranteed by complexity. Even the most intricate constructs return to silence. Another clue that deepens the sense of possibility is Silk Road contamination. The challenge of distinguishing natural geological anomalies from potential artificial ones. Earth's crust is filled with unusual signatures, rare metals concentrated by hydrothermal vents, massive deposits created by bacterial colonies, and chemical patterns formed by volcanic activity. These natural processes can mimic the markers scientists use to detect industrial activity. Scientifically, the Silurian Hypothesis explores whether an advanced civilization could have existed millions of years ago and whether we would detect its traces today. Researchers propose searching for unusual isotopic ratios, evidence of large-scale combustion or synthetic chemical production. But natural processes produce many of the same signatures, blurring the line between nature and intelligence. Visually, it's like trying to identify a single brushstroke on a painting that has been repainted countless times. Even if an earlier artist left a mark, the layers above twist and blur it until the origin becomes impossible to trace. And from that blurred canvas arises a philosophical reminder. The Earth is not trying to hide anything. It simply keeps painting over itself. Another source of awe lies in the sheer number of extinction events and evolutionary resets that Earth has endured. After each reset, new forms of life emerged, filling niches left empty by previous species. Some lineages reinvented themselves in unexpected ways, adapting ancient traits to new conditions. The cycle of destruction and renewal has repeated countless times, each iteration shaped by forces that move slowly but powerfully. Scientifically, the Permian-Triassic extinction event, the most severe known, wiped out over 90% of marine species and 70% of terrestrial species. It reshaped Earth's biosphere so completely that almost nothing from before resembles what came after. In such a context, any trace of advanced society would be effectively erased, overwritten by volcanic eruptions, methane releases, and the slow churn of tectonic plates. Visually, it resembles a forest after a massive wildfire. Once the flames pass, new shoots appear from the blackened soil, creating a landscape so different that few would guess what once stood there. The Earth renews itself with the same relentless rhythm, and from that rhythm comes a reflection. If civilizations rose before us, they too were subject to the same cycles of creation and erasure. Another intriguing aspect is how incomplete our exploration of Earth truly is. The deep ocean, covering 70% of the planet, remains largely uncharted. Most of its floor has never been mapped at high resolution, and its sediments hold secrets stretching back tens of millions of years. If remnants of something advanced exist, they could lie buried beneath kilometers of sediment or submerged beneath ancient continental shelves. Scientifically, the ocean floor is renewed every 200 million years on average, meaning any structures older than that are gone. But shallower regions, particularly around continental margins, could preserve older traces. Sediment cores drilled from ocean beds contain chemical layers revealing ancient climates, extinction events, and even asteroid impacts. The potential for deeper mysteries exists, hidden beneath pressure, darkness, and time. Visually, it feels like standing at the edge of a vast abyss, the water dark and still, hiding landscapes that have not seen sunlight for millions of years. Beneath the waves lie mountains taller than Everest, valleys deeper than the Grand Canyon, and plains where sediments settle like ancient snow. And from that unseen world comes a whisper. The planet we know is only the surface of a deeper story. Another element of wonder emerges when considering that intelligence need not resemble us at all. Our minds are shaped by our biology, by upright posture, grasping hands, binocular vision, and social behavior. An earlier species might have thought differently, built differently, and left different forms of memory behind. Their intelligence may not mirror ours. It may have expressed itself in ways we would struggle to recognize. Scientifically, intelligence evolves according to ecological pressures. Octopuses, dolphins, crows, and primates show complex problem-solving skills, each shaped by distinct environments and behaviors. An ancient species with high intelligence might have lacked the need for artifacts, using communication, biology, or ephemeral materials that decay rapidly. Visually, it's like imagining a symphony played not with instruments, but with patterns in water, ripples spreading outward, communicating meaning through motion rather than sound. If you arrived too late, the water would be still, leaving no trace of the performance. And from that silent water comes a philosophical insight. Not all intelligence leaves footprints. Some leave only patterns that time smooths away. Each of these clues, geological time, incomplete evidence, biological diversity, extinction events, oceanic depth, and the vast possibility of alternate intelligences, expands our sense of what might have been, not as certainty, but as curiosity, not as speculation, but as openness. And as that openness settles softly around your thoughts, another question begins to glow quietly at the edge of the dark. a question that leads deeper into the hidden possibilities scattered across the planet's forgotten ages. There is a strange kind of wonder that appears when you begin to see Earth not as a static world, but as a restless sphere constantly reshaping itself. The realization softens the edges of certainty. You begin to understand that the planet beneath your feet has shed countless versions of itself, each one vanishing before the next began. In that constant renewal lies a gentle possibility that entire stories may have unfolded in eras so distant that even the memory of their landscapes has been erased. Scientifically, Earth's continents move through cycles of merging and drifting known as the supercontinent cycle. Land masses have collided and separated repeatedly. Rodinia, Columbia, Gondwana, Pangaea, each one forming, fragmenting, and disappearing over hundreds of millions of years. During these cycles, coastlines shift, mountains rise and erode, and seas flood vast regions that were once land. Most rocks that existed at the surface during these cycles have been destroyed, subducted, or deeply altered. Visually, it's like watching an enormous puzzle constantly rearranging itself. Pieces slide into new patterns, edges change shape, and entire sections disappear before new ones emerge. The picture you see now is only the latest configuration in a long series of shifting images. And from that shifting puzzle comes a soft realization. The land we know today is not eternal. It is merely the current chapter of a book still being written by heat and pressure. Another layer of awe comes from the forces hidden beneath Earth's crust. The mantle churns slowly, carrying continents across its surface like rafts on molten rock. Volcanoes erupt where plates pull apart or collide, creating new islands while erasing older ones. Over millions of years, these forces can bury entire regions beneath thick layers of lava, ash, or sediment, sealing away whatever lived there before. Scientifically, large igneous provinces, such as the Deccan Traps or the Siberian Traps, flooded millions of square kilometers with lava, burying ecosystems and reshaping atmospheric chemistry. These events often coincide with mass extinctions. Any traces of surface structures, settlements, or civilizations, if they existed, would be completely entombed or obliterated. Visually, it feels like watching a slow, heavy curtain fall across a stage. Whatever stood behind it is swallowed by heat, darkness, and molten stone, leaving only a new landscape cooling quietly in its wake. And from that curtain comes a philosophical murmur. Creation and destruction are woven from the same cloth. One makes room for the other in an endless cycle. Another source of wonder arises when you examine the deep time of erosion. Mountains that once towered like vast giants crumble grain by grain. Rivers carve canyons that swallow entire landscapes. Wind carries dust across continents. Given enough time, and Earth has had more than enough, even the tallest structures are ground into sand. Scientifically, erosion rates vary but are relentless. Appalachia, once as tall as the Himalayas, has eroded into gentle rolling hills. Cliffs retreat, valleys deepen, and coastlines migrate. After a few million years, even massive stone monuments would be reduced to scattered fragments. After tens of millions, nothing recognizable would remain. Visually, erosion resembles an artist slowly erasing a charcoal drawing. The bold lines fade, the shapes soften, and eventually the page returns to emptiness, ready for a new sketch, and from that slow erasure comes a quiet truth. Time does not need violence to forget. Gentle persistence is enough. Another clue lies in the limitations of our fossil record. Many environments that existed in Earth's past were terrible at preserving anything. Forests, wetlands, deserts, and highlands all destroy remains quickly. Fossils form primarily in calm, low-oxygen environments. Shallow seas, river deltas, fine sediment beds. If an ancient civilization lived in habitats that rarely fossilize, their traces might have vanished entirely. Scientifically, fewer than 1% of species that ever lived are represented in the fossil record. This bias means entire ecosystems have disappeared without leaving fossils. Even massive animals can vanish without trace if they lived in environments hostile to preservation. Human-made materials degrade quickly under many conditions, failing to fossilize. Visually, it's like trying to reconstruct the plot of a long novel when you have only a handful of water-damaged pages. Most of the story is simply missing, dissolved by the conditions in which the pages once lay, and from that missing story comes a reflective whisper. Absence is not emptiness. It is simply the space where something once rested. Another astonishing aspect of deep time is the scale of environmental turnover. Earth has experienced ice ages where glaciers kilometers thick scraped continents bare. Entire regions were crushed beneath ice, bulldozing soil, rock, and anything built upon them. In warmer eras, lush jungles covered regions now barren or frozen. These extreme shifts reshape surface evidence beyond recognition. Scientifically, glacial cycles occur roughly every 100,000 years during ice ages. Glaciers erode bedrock at rates of meters per 1,000 years, transforming landscapes swiftly in geological terms. Any structures in their paths would be pulverized and scattered across moraines far from their origins. Visually, glaciers behave like slow, heavy rivers of stone, pushing everything in their path aside. The world behind them changes so completely that no one would guess what once lay beneath the ice. And from that icy reshaping comes a thought. Memory is fragile on a planet, constantly rewriting its surface. Subduction, the process through which oceanic crust sinks into the mantle, adds another layer of erasure. Most of the Earth's surface that existed hundreds of millions of years ago has already been recycled. If an ancient civilization lived on coastline regions or oceanic islands, their remnants may now lie hundreds of kilometers beneath our feet. Scientifically, oceanic crust is geologically short-lived compared to continental crust. While continents can persist for billions of years, ocean floors typically survive only 200 million years. Subduction zones consume them, melting rock and erasing any evidence they once held. Visually, it's like tossing old letters into a fire. The ink disappears, the paper curls into ash, and only smoke remains to hint that words ever existed there. And from that rising smoke comes a reminder. Earth remembers through transformation, not preservation. Another humbling factor is the sheer rarity of artifacts surviving deep time. The oldest known human-made structures are only about 12,000 years old. Metal rusts away in thousands of years, not millions. Glass survives longer, but fractures into sand-like grains. Even plastic breaks down into microfragments long before geological epochs pass. Scientifically, nothing we create is designed to outlast millions of years, except perhaps a few materials like zircon crystals, if embedded under the right conditions. Most traces of civilization would fade beyond detection in far less time. Only certain chemical anomalies, like isotopic ratios hinting at industrial activity, might persist. Visually, imagine a grand library abandoned for millennia. Books rot, ink fades, shelves collapse. After long enough, even the walls crumble. Eventually, all that remains is soil enriched with faint traces of what once stood there. And from that quiet decay emerges a soft understanding. The Earth does not hold on to stories unless they are carved into time itself. Another perspective-shifting element is Earth's volcanic history. Super eruptions like Toba and Yellowstone blanketed continents with ash, mutated climates, and left behind layers thick enough to bury landscapes wholesale. catastrophic floods of basalt poured across regions that once teemed with life, sealing them beneath hardened lava flows. Scientifically, the Toba eruption around 74,000 years ago spread ash across much of Asia. The Siberian Traps eruption 252 million years ago covered millions of square kilometers. These layers bury everything below them and can reach thicknesses that guarantee preservation only through total loss of surface detail. Visually, it's like pouring thick paint across a detailed painting. The original image remains underneath, but forever hidden beneath the hardened layer above it. And from that hidden layer comes a whisper. Some chapters of Earth's story are not missing, they're simply sealed away. All these forces, erosion, glaciation, volcanism, subduction, shifting continents, destructive environments, and the fragility of artifacts, converge into a single gentle truth. If something advanced existed in the deep past, its traces would have to fight against billions of years of pressure, fire, water, and motion to survive. And as you sit with that awareness, a new glow begins to form at the edge of imagination, an invitation to explore not the impossibility, but the quiet possibility that something once walked this planet long before we opened our eyes to wonder. There is a gentle awe that rises when you realize Earth has always been layered with secrets, stacked one atop another like quiet chapters written in stone. Each layer holds traces of past worlds, not just fossils and minerals, but the scars of forgotten climates, vanished seas, and landscapes that no longer exist. When you look closely enough, the ground begins to feel less like solid earth and more like a slow, silent memory stretched across 4.5 billion years. Scientifically, stratigraphy, the study of rock layers, reveals patterns of deposition, erosion, and transformation. Layers accumulate in environments ranging from deep oceans to river deltas to desert dunes. Over millions of years, sediments compact into rock, preserving chemical traces, microfossils, and rare imprints of past life. But these layers do not remain neatly stacked. Tectonic motion tilts them, folds them, crushes them, and sometimes carries them deep into the mantle where all recognizable structures are lost. Visually, it resembles a vast library where books are constantly taken apart, rewritten, and rebound with new covers. Some chapters remain intact, but many are torn, smudged, or replaced entirely. The story is still there, just incomplete, fragmented, whispered through faint impressions on old pages. And from those whispered impressions comes a quiet thought. The Earth does not keep perfect archives. It keeps echoes, and echoes can be interpreted in more than one way. Another layer of wonder comes from the isotopes sealed inside ancient rocks. Atoms of carbon, oxygen, and nitrogen record. Subtle shifts in atmosphere and temperature. Heavy metals cluster in ways that hint at past volcanic events or asteroid impacts. These chemical signatures act like fingerprints of eras long gone, revealing transformations far older than any fossil. Scientifically, isotopic ratios such as carbon-13 to carbon-12 are used to detect biological activity. Sudden spikes or drops may indicate large-scale events like methane release, combustion, or rapid shifts in global ecosystems. Some researchers propose that industrial civilizations, if they existed millions of years ago, might leave behind anomalous chemical patterns. Yet natural processes often create similar anomalies, making it difficult to separate artificial signals from natural ones. Visually, it's like trying to identify a painter's style from a single brushstroke, found on a canvas that has been washed and repainted for countless ages. You can sense intention, but not certainty. And from that uncertain brushstroke comes a gentle reminder. The line between nature and intelligence is sometimes thinner than we imagine. Another source of fascination lies in how often Earth has rebooted itself. Entire biospheres have been wiped clean by sudden temperature shifts, volcanic winters, asteroid impacts, and runaway greenhouse events. After each collapse, life rebounds, filling emptied niches with new forms that bear little resemblance to what came before. These resets create vast stretches of time where only fragments of the old world survive. Scientifically, events like the Permian-Triassic extinction erased 95% of marine species, leaving behind barren seafloors that only slowly regained complexity. Afterward, unfamiliar organisms appeared, ammonoids with spiraled shells, early reptiles, and strange fish unlike their predecessors. Earth did not preserve the past. It rebuilt from what remained. Visually, it feels like a garden scorched by fire, only to bloom again with new colors, shapes, and fragrances. The original arrangement is forgotten, replaced by something new yet built upon the ashes of what came before. And from that renewal comes a philosophical whisper. Creation is not a single act, but an endless cycle of loss and emergence. Another point of wonder rests in the concept of geological blind spots. These are eras for which we have almost no record, vast stretches of time where rocks are missing, destroyed, or deeply altered. Some periods lack clear fossils, others lack preserved sediments, and some contain only metamorphic rocks that formed under crushing pressure and heat. Scientifically, unconformities in the rock record represent gaps that can span tens or hundreds of millions of years. The Great Unconformity, for example, represents a missing billion years of geological history in some regions. During such gaps, entire landscapes could have risen and eroded without leaving a trace. If anything advanced existed during those intervals, their memories would be buried beneath missing pages of Earth's story. Visually, these gaps feel like chapters ripped from a novel, not just missing sentences, but entire arcs of development. You turn the page and suddenly the narrative leaps ahead, leaving you wondering what happened in between. And from that leap comes a thought. What we know of Earth is shaped as much by what is absent as by what remains. Another clue lies in how the ocean forms a veil over most of Earth's surface. The deep sea covers regions that once stood above water before tectonics dragged them downward. Ancient coastlines, river deltas, and floodplains now lie beneath kilometers of water and sediment. These submerged regions may contain traces of lost eras, but they remain inaccessible to all but the most advanced research vessels. Scientifically, continental shelves flood and dry repeatedly over geological cycles. During ice ages, sea levels drop dramatically, exposing vast coastal plains. When the ice melts, oceans rise and bury them again. These drowned landscapes could hold sediments rich with clues, pollen, microfossils, minerals, yet most remain unstudied. Visually, it's like walking across a calm shoreline, knowing that beneath the waves stretches an entire world of valleys, mountains, and forgotten riverbeds hidden from sight. And from that hidden world comes a reflection. Much of Earth's memory lies in places we rarely look. Another humbling element appears when we consider the fragility of ancient technology. Even if a civilization had mastered metallurgy or energy production, many of its artifacts would not survive deep time. Metal structures corrode, electronic components disintegrate, and organic materials vanish quickly. Only under rare conditions, extreme dryness, deep burial, low oxygen, might traces persist. Scientifically, the oldest known metal artifacts made by humans are only about 9,000 years old, and many have already degraded significantly. Over millions of years, erosion, oxidation, and geological turnover erase even the most durable materials. only chemical traces might linger, unusual alloys, residues of combustion, or isotopic anomalies that hint at industrial processes. Visually, it's like imagining an ancient bell forged from bronze, left exposed to rain and wind for eons. Slowly, the bell dissolves into green dust, leaving nothing but enriched soil where it once rang. And from that dissolved bell comes a soft truth. Even the strongest creations yield to the patience of time. Another aspect of wonder lies in mineral deposits. Certain metal concentrations, nickel, cobalt, copper, can form naturally in ways that resemble industrial waste. Hydrothermal vents create chimneys rich in minerals. Asteroid impacts scatter rare elements. Volcanic gases deposit heavy metals in fine layers. These natural processes blur the line between what is geological and what might be artificial. Scientifically, researchers examining the Silurian Hypothesis note that industrial activity might produce unusual patterns in metal distribution. Yet, similar anomalies occur in deep-sea vent fields, iron formations, and impact layers. Distinguishing one from the other requires careful analysis and a willingness to accept ambiguity. Visually, it feels like finding a metallic glimmer in ancient rock and wondering whether it is a natural crystal or a forgotten fragment of something once crafted. And from that glimmer comes a reminder: the Earth produces wonders on its own, wonders that can feel intelligent even when they are not. Taken together, these geological mysteries, shifting continents, erased landscapes, chemical echoes, fossil gaps, oceanic veils, fragile artifacts, and mineral enigmas, point toward a planet far more dynamic and forgetful than our human timelines suggest, not as evidence for hidden civilizations, but as an invitation to wonder how much may have risen and vanished in the deep silence of time. And as that thought settles softly into you, another question begins to glow at the edges of the dark, a question that draws us deeper into the puzzle of what might still be hidden beneath the layers of Earth's ancient memory. There is a special kind of reverence that rises when you realize how many mysteries are locked within the rocks beneath our feet. Not fantastical stories or exaggerated legends, but quiet, scientific puzzles, anomalies that whisper of events we don't yet understand. Some of these puzzles appear so subtle that they are easy to dismiss. Others glow faintly like embers hidden under layers of dust. And when viewed through the lens of deep time, even small anomalies can feel like echoes from forgotten worlds. One such anomaly is the presence of spherical metal nodules known as concretions, many of which form naturally, but some of which contain patterns that raise questions. These metal spheres, found in layers tens of millions of years old, often have internal banding or unusual compositions. Most originate from mineral precipitation or microbial activity, but a few examples show precise layering or hollow centers that spark curiosity. While geology offers explanations, these structures remind scientists how complex natural processes can appear. Visually, these nodules resemble small planets folded inside stone, metallic moons hidden within sediment, glowing faintly under lamplight when cut open. Their layers look deliberate, almost architectural, even though their formation is slow, blind, and guided by chemistry. And from that resemblance comes a quiet reminder. Nature often builds with the precision of an artist, creating shapes that feel meaningful even when their origins are purely geological. Another curious feature lies in ancient mining patterns. In several regions, especially in Africa and the Middle East, geologists have found extremely old mines whose depths and complexity exceed what simple early human tools should allow. Some date back tens or hundreds of thousands of years. These ancient excavations were likely made by hominins, but the exact timeline remains unclear, and the scale of some of the tunnels sparks questions about their purpose. Scientifically, Ancient mining is confirmed in places like Ngwenya mine in Eswatini, which dates back more than 40,000 years. Early humans extracted hematite and ochre using stone tools. Yet some patterns in the tunnels suggest prolonged activity or structural reinforcement that appears advanced for the time. The challenge lies not in attributing them to an unknown civilization, but in recognizing how capable early hominins already were. Visually, these mines feel like doorways into forgotten intent. Long tunnels carved in deep silence, their walls polished by hands that lived countless lifetimes before ours, hands guided by needs we can only guess. And from that doorway comes a reflection. The line between primitive and advanced may be thinner than we often assume. Yet another layer of mystery emerges from the discovery of out-of-place artifacts, objects that appear older than expected for the layers in which they are found. While most are misunderstandings or misidentifications, a few remain debated. Unusual metal fragments, carved stones, or machine-like shapes embedded in rock. Each one has rational geological explanations, yet their presence encourages deeper examination of how natural processes can mimic artificial forms. Scientifically, many of these anomalies arise from concretion formation, mineral dendrites, or intrusive rock structures. A piece of metal may actually be pyrite. A gear-like pattern may be the cross-section of a fossilized crinoid. A carved stone may be shaped by erosion. But the very fact that these structures resemble artifacts reveals how easily the mind ascribes intention to natural patterns. Visually, it's like finding a smooth stone on a riverbank, shaped uncannily like a hand tool, edges softened by water, curves too perfect to feel accidental. You turn it over, wondering whether the river shaped it or whether someone else once held it. And from that wondering comes a philosophical whisper. Mystery is not always evidence. Sometimes it is an invitation to look more carefully. Another fascinating signal comes from layers enriched with rare isotopes. When physicists examine rock strata millions of years old, they often find spikes of radioisotopes or metals associated with volcanic events or meteor impacts. But a few layers contain patterns difficult to classify, anomalies in carbon or nitrogen isotopes that don't neatly match known geological events. Scientifically, isotope anomalies have many natural explanations: supernova debris, cosmic radiation bursts, large-scale wildfires, springs, or microbial blooms. But their irregularity keeps them interesting, especially when signatures appear globally rather than regionally. Such patterns could, in theory, indicate large-scale chemical activity. Visually, these anomalies feel like faded ink marks on stone pages, faint, irregular, hinting at something large that happened long ago, yet too smudged to identify clearly. And from those faded marks arises a gentle thought. Sometimes the past leaves clues without leaving context. Another source of wonder lies in the discovery of mysterious microscopic spheres, tiny metallic beads found in sediments that predate humanity by millions of years. Many form through volcanic activity or cosmic impacts, but some display compositions that prompt further questions. Their uniformity and distribution can sometimes resemble industrial byproducts, though natural processes remain the favored explanation. Scientifically, microspherules appear after high-temperature events such as lightning strikes, volcanic eruptions, or meteoric explosions. Their surfaces may be smooth or pitted, and their chemistry reflects the conditions in which they formed. Distinguishing natural from artificial requires detailed chemical analysis, tests that are not always possible on ancient samples. Visually, they look like glittering grains of stardust scattered across ancient mud, shining when caught at the right angle, disappearing into shadow when held still. And from that stardust-like shimmer comes a reflection. The Earth often creates beauty that feels engineered, even when no hands shaped it. Another intriguing anomaly lies in the formation of polygonal stone fields, geometric arrangements of rocks that appear deliberate but form naturally through freeze-thaw cycles and soil contraction. They occur in deserts, Arctic environments, and mountain regions. While fully understood geologically, their symmetry once led early explorers to speculate about lost structures or ancient walls. Scientifically, frost heave pushes stones upward, while gravity and soil tension arrange them into hexagonal patterns. Over centuries, the stones shift, rotate, and settle into shapes that appear organized. Their geometry is the product of physics, simple interactions producing complex forms. Visually, these fields resemble ancient pavements or the foundations of forgotten settlements, stretching across desolate landscapes in quiet geometric orders. And from that geometry arises a gentle reminder: nature often builds with the same symmetry that humans find beautiful. Another quiet curiosity lies in traces of ancient chemical pollutants. In a few rock layers dating tens of millions of years old, researchers have detected unusual concentrations of hydrocarbons or heavy metals that are difficult to attribute to known events. Volcanism remains the strongest explanation, but the very idea of pollution so old raises a contemplative question about how industrial signatures might appear in deep time. Scientifically, hydrocarbons can accumulate naturally through algal blooms, forest fires, or geological processes. Metal concentrations can result from hydrothermal vents or asteroid debris. But if an advanced species had existed, their industry might leave similar residues, indistinguishable without context. Visually, these chemical hints feel like stains on an old tapestry, subtle discolorations that suggest something happened, though the pattern has faded beyond recognition. And from that faint stain comes a thought: deep time does not preserve stories, it preserves clues. Another wonder emerges from technofossils, a term scientists use for future geological traces of our own civilization. Concrete, aluminum, plastics, and synthetic chemicals may one day become markers of our presence. By studying what we will leave behind, researchers gain insight into what ancient civilizations might have left had they risen long before us. Scientifically, the Anthropocene is defined partly by these technofossils: fly ash, plastics, nitrogen spikes from fertilizers, and isotopic anomalies from nuclear activity. These markers highlight how human activity can alter sediment layers on a global scale. If an earlier civilization existed, similar global signals might appear, faint but detectable. Visually, technofossils resemble the fingerprints left on a glass window, smudges and impressions that remain after the hand is long gone. And from those faint fingerprints comes a philosophical murmur. Every civilization touches the Earth, but the Earth decides how long that touch remains. All these anomalies, metal nodules, ancient mines, microscopic spheres, isotopic spikes, geometric stone fields, chemical layers, do not point conclusively to unknown civilizations. But they reveal something deeper. Earth's past is filled with puzzles, ambiguities, and patterns that invite curiosity. They remind us that we are not the first to notice the planet's complexity. We are simply the latest. And as you settle into this expanding sense of mystery, another quiet thread begins to glow, leading deeper into the shadowed spaces where possibility grows, waiting softly in the dark for the next step of this journey. There is a moment, somewhere in the middle of this long journey through Earth's forgotten eras, when the mystery stops feeling like an external puzzle and starts feeling like something woven into the planet itself. The deeper you look, the more you sense that Earth does not merely hold secrets, It breathes them. Its rocks inhale heat, exhale minerals, and shift like slow muscles beneath our feet. And within that slow movement, there are patterns that feel almost intentional, as if the planet has spent billions of years quietly shaping and reshaping its own memory. Scientifically, this perception shifts when you examine Earth's deep crust and mantle processes. Beneath the continents lie roots of ancient cratons, stable blocks of rock more than 3 billion years old. These cratons act like floating rafts on the mantle, preserving fragments of Earth's earliest crust. Studies using seismic tomography reveal mysterious structures deep below, including large low-shear velocity provinces, enigmatic regions the size of continents whose composition and origins remain unclear. Some theories suggest they are remnants of proto-continents. Others point to ancient subducted plates altered beyond recognition. Visually, these hidden blocks feel like ghost continents, vast shapes drifting slowly in the dark beneath us, never seen directly, yet influencing the world in ways we barely understand. They resemble ancient ruins, submerged beneath deep oceans of rock, their outlines softened by heat and pressure. And from those ghostly outlines comes a quiet thought. The Earth remembers far more than it reveals, and its oldest memories lie where no eye can reach. Another fascinating layer of mystery appears when studying geomagnetic reversals. Throughout Earth's history, the magnetic poles have flipped hundreds of times, sometimes rapidly, sometimes over thousands of years. These reversals leave traces in volcanic rocks and sediments, patterns like magnetic fingerprints, pointing at the invisible dance within the core. Scientifically, the geodynamo theory explains that Earth's magnetic field arises from the motion of liquid iron in the outer core, but the exact triggers of reversals remain uncertain. During some flips, the magnetic field weakens dramatically, exposing the planet to increased cosmic radiation. These periods could disrupt ecosystems, alter atmospheric chemistry, and even affect electrical phenomena on the surface. Visually, a geomagnetic reversal resembles a lantern whose flame flickers, dims, and then reignites with its light pointed in a new direction. During that brief dimming, shadows stretch unpredictably across the room, creating a strange and unfamiliar atmosphere. And from that flickering lantern comes a reflection. Even the forces we depend on most are capable of sudden transformation. Another subtle but profound clue involves the remnants of ancient coastlines buried deep inland. Throughout Earth's history, sea levels have risen and fallen by hundreds of meters due to tectonics, glaciation, and climate shifts. Entire coastal civilizations, if they existed in distant eras, could have been swallowed by rising seas and sealed beneath sedimentary layers. Scientifically, the last major sea level rise, after the last glacial maximum, raised oceans by about 120 meters. But in deeper time, some rises exceeded 300 meters. During these intervals, vast coastal plains were submerged. Sediment eventually blanketed these drowned landscapes, preserving organic materials, minerals, and layered sediments that now lie hundreds of meters beneath the seabed or deep continental shelves. Visually, it's like imagining a once bustling shoreline slowly descending underwater as quiet waves rise year after year. Houses, forests, or structures, if they existed, would disappear beneath the surface until only the smooth murmur of water remained. And from that submersion comes a philosophical whisper. Time does not erase suddenly. It erases gently, like tides claiming the last footprints on a beach. Another captivating feature lies in the mystery of orphan minerals. Minerals found in certain rock formations that do not match the known geology around them. These minerals appear to belong to rock types or environmental conditions that no longer exist in the region. suggesting that entire geological contexts have been lost over time. Scientifically, orphan minerals often arise from ancient processes now absent: superhot hydrothermal fluids, deep crustal metamorphism, or long-eroded volcanic systems. Some form only under extreme pressures found deep underground, yet appear in rocks near the surface. Their presence implies massive uplift, erosion, or tectonic transport over hundreds of millions of years. Visually, they feel like misplaced keys found in an empty room, objects that don't belong, hinting at a story that unfolded long ago and left only a small trace behind. And from that misplaced clue comes a thought. The past does not vanish cleanly. It leaves fragments that drift out of context. Another layer of intrigue emerges from paleomagnetic anomalies, regions where ancient rocks record directions of magnetism that defy expectations. These signatures indicate that continents once rotated at unusual angles or moved at speeds far greater than modern plate motion allows. Scientifically, paleomagnetism shows that some landmasses, especially in the Precambrian, underwent rapid, dramatic shifts known as true polar wander, where the entire crust and mantle rotated around the core. These global tilts could transform climates, erase ecosystems, and fracture continents. In such chaos, any traces of surface life or structures would be obliterated, leaving only cryptic magnetic fingerprints in ancient rocks. Visually, it resembles the world tilting slowly under a starry sky, continents sliding toward new latitudes like pieces on a board drifting under unseen hands. And from that drifting world comes a gentle realization. Stability is only temporary, even for continents. Another mysterious clue lies deep in the mantle. Isotopic signatures that suggest Earth's interior may contain pockets of primordial material dating back to the planet's formation. These ancient reservoirs hold chemical fingerprints older than the oldest rocks on the surface. If surface evidence once existed, biological, geological, or technological, it may have been dragged downward into these depths, folded into the slow, churning interior. Scientifically, some mantle plumes carry helium-3, a rare isotope associated with early solar system material. These plumes rise through the mantle, bringing ancient gases to the surface through volcanic eruptions. The fact that primordial signatures remain suggests that deep Earth preserves fragments of unimaginable antiquity. Visually, these plumes feel like murmurs rising from the planet's heart, whispers of ancient heat drifting upward through stone, bearing messages from Earth's earliest breath. And from that deep whisper comes a meditation. Memory extends downward as well as backward, sinking into warmth instead of fading into cold. Another source of awe lies in the discovery of ancient microscopic structures trapped in zircon crystals. These minerals, some more than 4 billion years old, contain oxygen isotopes that hint at early oceans and possible early continents. They hold the faintest clues to Earth's first environments, including thermal signatures that suggest surface conditions far more varied than once believed. Scientifically, zircon crystals preserve chemical information with extraordinary resilience. Their internal patterns reveal shifts in temperature, pressure, and atmospheric composition across billions of years. Some zircons even contain carbon inclusions that may represent traces of early life, or chemical environments conducive to life. Visually, zircons resemble tiny gemstones holding galaxies within them, swirling patterns frozen in time, visible only under magnification, glowing with the warmth of ancient Earth. And from those glowing crystals comes a reflection. Even the smallest fragments can carry the weight of entire worlds. Another component of mystery lies in the scarred surfaces of continents, ancient impact structures so eroded and distorted that only their gravitational fingerprints remain. These invisible craters hint at collisions so devastating they reshaped entire regions. Any traces of life or civilization near such impacts would have been vaporized instantly. Scientifically, gravity anomalies, shocked quartz, and rare element deposits reveal impact structures more than 2 billion years old. Many are so deeply eroded that no surface expression remains. Their discovery relies on satellite data, seismic imaging, and chemical signatures hidden inside metamorphic rocks. Visually, such impacts feel like forgotten storms, destructive forces so powerful that even their scars have been healed by time. And from those healed scars comes a quiet thought. Some catastrophes leave nothing to remember them by. Earth's deep time mysteries, tectonic ghosts, chemical whispers, drowned coastlines, orphan minerals, mantle plumes, zircon galaxies, and invisible craters form a quiet chorus, inviting us to wonder how much has transpired on this planet long before our species existed, not as proof of ancient civilizations, but as an opening of perspective. And as that perspective widens softly around your thoughts, another subtle glow appears at the far edges of imagination, guiding you deeper into the silent spaces where possibility takes shape in the dark. There is a moment in every deep investigation when the questions stop being distant and begin to breathe beside you. As you move through Earth's deep shadowed history, the idea of forgotten civilizations shifts from abstract speculation into something more intimate, a quiet possibility that lingers at the edge of thought. It doesn't claim certainty, nor does it demand belief. It simply rests there like a soft echo, reminding you that the world has held far more stories than the ones we inherited. Scientifically, this shift occurs when examining patterns of global change, cycles of warming and cooling, oxygen fluctuations, ocean chemistry shifts, and long-term climate oscillations recorded in sediment cores and ice layers. These cycles show that Earth has undergone repeated environmental transformations, each capable of influencing, supporting, or erasing entire forms of life. Across millions of years, climates have swung from icehouse worlds to hothouse planets, each with ecosystems unlike anything alive today. Visually, it feels like watching a long film in which the scenes change abruptly, snowy landscapes giving way to jungles, deserts shifting into shallow seas, mountains rising where valleys once lay. The transitions happen slowly in geological time, yet they slice sharply through Earth's memory like edits in an ancient documentary. And from those edits comes a quiet thought. If stories were written in those lost worlds, they would have been shaped by climates we can barely imagine. Another layer of reverence emerges when considering Earth's biogeochemical whispers, faint chemical clues preserved in sediments that hint at dramatic shifts in biological activity. Some transitions show sudden drops in oxygen, while others display spikes in carbon dioxide or methane. These changes may reflect volcanic eruptions, massive algal blooms, or global wildfires, but they also highlight how sensitive Earth's ecosystems have always been to disruption. Scientifically, these chemical transitions are studied through proxies like carbon isotopes, sulfur ratios, and trace metals. Sudden anomalies in these signatures sometimes extend across the globe, indicating events that unfolded rapidly on a planetary scale. Such events could erase entire ecosystems in a geological instant, making it difficult to determine what lived there before. Visually, these chemical spikes resemble faint lines on a weathered scroll, thin marks left behind by events too vast to capture in detail, yet too important to forget entirely. And from those faint lines arises a whisper. Earth's history is written in strokes both heavy and delicate, and many of its pages hold only the remnants of what once was. Another marvel lies in the fossil gaps, stretches of millions of years where almost no complex fossils appear. These gaps often result from conditions unfavorable to preservation, yet they leave enormous blank spaces in the story of life. When you gaze into these empty intervals, you sense the weight of what could have existed there, living fully and disappearing silently. Scientifically, the Ediacaran-Cambrian transition contains such a gap, where soft-bodied organisms left only faint impressions before being replaced by hard-shelled creatures that fossilized more readily. Other gaps occur when sedimentation slows or erosion dominates. In these intervals, entire ecosystems may have thrived, leaving no direct fossil evidence. Visually, these gaps feel like rooms in an ancient house where all the furniture has been removed, the paint faded, and the windows shuttered. You can feel that life once moved there, though nothing remains to prove it. And from that empty room comes a philosophical murmur. The absence of evidence is sometimes nothing more than the stillness between breaths. Another quiet wonder appears in the form of ancient shorelines found high on mountaintops. At first glance, they seem impossible. Wave-cut terraces and fossilized marine sediments perched thousands of meters above sea level. These features remind you how dramatically Earth can shift over time, lifting ancient seafloors into the sky through slow geological uplift. Scientifically, mountain ranges like the Himalayas and the Andes contain marine fossils embedded in limestone formed in shallow seas. As tectonic plates collided, these sediments were pushed upward over millions of years, folding and fracturing into towering peaks. The fossils remain as silent witnesses of worlds that have long vanished beneath shifting crust. Visually, these ancient shells atop mountains feel like forgotten postcards from distant eras, messages carried upward by stone, delivered millions of years later to anyone who cares to look. And from those stone-carried messages comes a reflection. Even landscapes we consider eternal are only passing moments in Earth's restless journey. Another layer of mystery comes from discovering signs of ancient river systems buried beneath deserts and ice sheets. Using satellite radar and ground-penetrating imaging, scientists have found vast networks of fossilized rivers that once flowed across landscapes now barren and dry. These buried rivers suggest lush ecosystems that existed long before modern climates took hold. Scientifically, regions like the Sahara once hosted lakes, forests, and fertile plains during the African humid period. But deeper beneath the sands lie even older riverbeds, shaped tens of millions of years ago. Similar buried systems exist beneath Antarctica's ice, hinting at temperate climates that thrived before the continent drifted to its polar isolation. Visually, these rivers resemble ghost veins beneath the skin of the Earth, faint, branching paths that once carried life, but now carry only silence. And from those ghostly channels comes a quiet truth. Environments shift faster than we imagine, and life must adapt or fade with them. Another wonder arises from enigmatic fossils that defy classification. In several periods, particularly the Ediacaran and early Cambrian, organisms appear with body plans so unusual that they challenge our definitions of animals, plants, or fungi. Their shapes are alien, their symmetries strange, their life cycles uncertain. Scientifically, creatures like Dickinsonia, Sprigina, and Rangeomorphs demonstrate how experimentation flourished early in life's evolution. Some appear fractal-like, others seem biologically unique. These organisms may represent evolutionary paths that rose briefly and vanished without descendants, leaving behind forms that suggest intelligence or complexity in unfamiliar forms. Visually, these fossils resemble imprints left by beings that drifted through oceans with gentle motion, shapes that feel delicate, otherworldly, and hauntingly beautiful. And from those delicate patterns comes a whisper. Intelligence is not limited to familiar forms. It may express itself in ways we would struggle to recognize. Another subtle but profound clue lies in paleosols, ancient soils preserved beneath rock layers. These soils record vegetation, atmospheric chemistry, and biological activity from millions of years ago. Some paleosols show chemical anomalies or unusual layering that hint at environmental conditions not yet fully understood. Scientifically, paleosols capture atmospheric oxygen levels, trace metals, and patterns of microbial life. Some contain unusual isotopic signatures suggesting rapid climate shifts or events that altered soil chemistry dramatically. Their subtle complexities raise questions about ecological changes that might have shaped unknown biological lineages. Visually, paleosols feel like pages of a book written in colors rather than letters, layers of red, brown, and gray that reveal long-forgotten climates beneath your fingertips. And from those colored pages arises a thoughtful reminder. Earth's surface has worn many faces, and each one held its own communities, its own possibilities. Another clue of reverence lies in how often Earth's ecosystems develop convergent solutions, traits that appear independently across unrelated species due to similar environmental pressures. Wings evolved in insects, birds, and bats. Eyes evolved multiple times. Intelligence may follow similar patterns, arising whenever the conditions allow. Scientifically, convergent evolution demonstrates that certain biological solutions are favored by natural selection. If intelligence is one such favored solution, then it might have arisen multiple times in Earth's deep past. Perhaps not in forms we would recognize, and perhaps not for long enough to leave clear traces. Visually, it's like seeing similar patterns appear in different cultures, separated by vast distances. Circles, spirals, and eyes that emerge again and again, guided by something universal in the human mind. And from that unifying pattern comes a philosophical question. If intelligence is a natural solution, could it have risen before us, briefly illuminating the world before fading? All these layers, buried rivers, misplaced fossils, ghost shorelines, isotopic whispers, tectonic memories, and convergent echoes do not answer the question of ancient civilizations, but they deepen the mystery, expanding the possibility space into something vast, humble and filled with quiet wonder. And as those possibilities gather around your thoughts like a soft veil, another deeper question begins to shimmer gently in the dark, a question that leads directly into the more introspective emotions waiting in the next stretch of the journey. There is a quiet ache that settles in when you start to consider how much of Earth's story has vanished beyond recovery. Not just fossils or artifacts, but entire possibilities, worlds that rose and fell before any witness survived to remember them. This melancholy is gentle, not sharp, like the feeling of walking through a library, missing most of its books. You can sense the weight of what once filled its shelves, even though only a few scattered volumes remain. Scientifically, this ache deepens when examining extinction bottlenecks in Earth's past. Several events reduced global biodiversity to a fraction of its former state. After each collapse, evolution restarted with limited genetic material, building new ecosystems from the remnants that survived. These bottlenecks erase biological lineages so thoroughly that even their molecular traces disappear. What we see today is only the outcome of the last few recoveries, not a complete representation of all life that ever existed. Visually, bottlenecks resemble the narrowing of a river passing through a canyon. Wide waters funnel into a tight channel, losing much of what once flowed freely before expanding downstream into something new yet fundamentally altered. The water continues, but much of its story is lost in the squeeze. And from that narrowing comes a philosophical murmur. Survival is not proof of superiority, it is simply the outcome of circumstance. Another gentle sorrow rises when contemplating evolutionary dead ends. Branches of life that developed complexity, ingenuity, or unusual traits, only to vanish without leaving descendants. These lost experiments show how evolution explores possibilities that may shine brightly for a time, but ultimately fail to secure a future. Their disappearance is not a failure, merely a reminder that existence is fragile across long stretches of time. Scientifically, groups like the trilobites, ammonites, and many Precambrian organisms represent these evolutionary paths. Some possessed advanced sensory systems, social behaviors, or protective shells. Yet mass extinctions or environmental shifts overtook them. Their loss does not imply inadequacy. It reflects the unpredictable nature of planetary change. Visually, these vanished branches resemble beautifully carved sculptures left outdoors for centuries, elegant forms slowly worn down by weather until only faint outlines remain, hinting at shapes that once commanded attention. And from those fading outlines arises a quiet thought. Life is full of brilliance that the future never sees. Another layer of melancholy emerges when considering how rarely intelligence leaves a lasting mark. Even among modern species, many forms of problem-solving and communication vanish without documentation. Dolphins create signature whistles, crows craft tools, octopuses solve puzzles, elephants mourn their dead. Yet if these species disappeared tomorrow, future researchers might never know that complex minds once thrived beside us. Scientifically, intelligence is notoriously difficult to detect in the fossil record. Brain size and skull structure offer clues, but behavior, culture, and communication leave almost no lasting traces. Even human technology, if erased by deep time, would leave little more than scattered chemical hints. Visually, this realization feels like watching intricate patterns traced in sand moments before the tide washes them away. Designs full of intention, beauty, and thought, lost not because they lacked meaning, but because their canvas was temporary. And from that vanishing artwork comes a reflective whisper. Intelligence may be common across time, yet rarely does it leave a permanent echo. Another soft sadness appears when considering Earth's long periods of stability, epochs that could have nurtured intelligence, culture, or even civilization, yet left no clear trace. These quiet intervals lasted millions of years, providing calm climates and abundant ecosystems. They were fertile grounds for complex life, but whatever rose during those times has disappeared so cleanly that only silence remains. Scientifically, the mid-Mesozoic, parts of the Paleogene, and portions of the Devonian were remarkably stable. Evolution had time, resources, and space to explore complexity. Yet fossil records from these periods offer only glimpses of dominant life forms, leaving room for speculation about what might have existed in poorly preserved environments, forests, wetlands, coastal plains, where traces dissolve quickly. Visually, these epochs resemble long summer days whose memories fade not because nothing happened, but because too much happened softly, leaving no sharp edges for recollection to hold on to. And from that fading light arises a thought. Stability is fertile ground for stories, even if none survive to be told. Another layer of introspection emerges when reflecting on the near-total erasure of soft-bodied organisms throughout deep time. Most of Earth's early life had no shells, bones, or hard parts. Their bodies returned to the environment within days of dying. If any complex species with soft structures existed, intelligent or not, their traces would be almost impossible to find. Scientifically, even today, soft-bodied creatures barely fossilize except in rare environments like Burgess Shale-type deposits. The absence of fossils does not indicate the absence of organisms, only the absence of ideal preservation conditions. Entire ecosystems could have flourished invisibly in the geological record. Visually, these creatures feel like dancers whose footsteps leave no imprint, movements full of grace and meaning, carried away the moment the music ends. And from that unrecorded dance comes a realization. Most of life's history is missing, not because it was unimportant, but because it was transient. Another melancholy insight comes from the way living planets recycle themselves. On a geological timescale, nothing survives unchanged. Mountains crumble, oceans shift, continents fracture, ice sheets advance and retreat. Even the atmosphere evolves, altering the very chemistry that once defined earlier eras. Whatever existed before us has been sifted through countless cycles of destruction and renewal. Scientifically, the carbon cycle, rock cycle, and water cycle all contribute to this planetary forgetfulness. Carbon locked in organisms becomes limestone through sedimentation. Limestone becomes marble through metamorphism. Marble erodes back into sediment. Information carried in biological structures dissolves into new forms, erased at a molecular level. Visually, it feels like a painter endlessly reusing the same canvas, layering new works over old ones until the original portraits fade completely beneath strokes of fresh color. And from that repainted canvas comes a gentle truth. The Earth is not a museum. It is a living artist. Another reflective sadness emerges when considering that entire lineages might have developed forms of communication or culture without leaving any trace. Communication can occur through sound, light, chemicals, vibration, or movement. Culture can arise in small groups, pass through generations, and vanish without ever altering the landscape. Scientifically, researchers studying animal cognition note that culture exists in primates, birds, cetaceans, and even insects. Termites build complex structures. Corvids teach tool use generationally. Whales develop learned songs. These subtle cultures leave no fossil signature. If ancient species had similar systems, we might never know. Visually, these lost cultures resemble whispered conversations carried away by wind, meaningful, intimate, and utterly unrecorded. And from that whispered elusiveness comes a realization. Existence is rich with stories that do not survive their storytellers. Another layer of melancholy emerges when considering how brief consciousness is in the geological timeline. If Earth's history were a day, complex animal life appears in the last minutes, human civilization in the last seconds. Any earlier intelligence, unless massively widespread and durable, would easily slip through the cracks of deep time. Scientifically, the rarity of long-term preservation makes timelines slippery. A civilization lasting 200,000 years, long by human standards, would still be a flicker in geological time. Only widespread global industrial activity might leave chemical or isotopic signals that survive more than a few million years. Visually, it resembles a single candle flame flickering at twilight, bright, warm, momentary, swallowed by darkness the moment it goes out. And from that brief glow comes a quiet question: how many candles have burned on this planet before ours? Another quiet ache rises when contemplating that even if an ancient civilization existed, its final years could have passed unnoticed by the universe. Extinction can be slow, a decline across centuries or millennia, or sudden, swept away by disaster. Either way, the last voices fade, the last structures crumble, and the last memories dissolve into earth and water. Scientifically, population genetics demonstrates how vulnerable complex societies can be to environmental shifts. Droughts, volcanic winters, and rapid climate changes can collapse ecosystems faster than large species can adapt. a species may decline to extinction gradually, leaving faint traces that blend indistinguishably into the surrounding geological noise. Visually, it feels like a village emptied by time, lanterns still hanging in doorways, tools left in fields, all slowly reclaimed by vines and wind until nothing remains but soil enriched by what once lived there. And from that imagery comes a final whisper. Even civilizations may pass like seasons, returning to the earth that shaped them. All these reflections, soft-bodied vanishings, forgotten cultures, evolutionary dead ends, erased ecosystems, and the brief flicker of consciousness weave together into a gentle melancholy, not a sorrow of fear, but a recognition of impermanence, a reminder that everything you see, everything you know, stands on the bones of stories long forgotten. And as that awareness settles like dusk across your mind, another deeper contemplation begins to form, one that invites you to explore what it means to exist in a world built from unremembered beginnings. There is a softer, deeper ache that comes when you look backward into Earth's past and realize that most of existence, not just life, but thought, emotion, and experience, has passed in total silence. Billions of years filled with winds rushing across empty continents, waves striking barren shores, volcanoes sculpting mountains that no eye watched. Even the possibility of consciousness, if it bloomed before us, might have risen like a spark and faded without leaving a mark. That silence holds an immense, almost unbearable beauty. Scientifically, this silence becomes clearer when examining the concept of taphonomic bias, the study of how badly nature preserves its own history. Soft-bodied beings disappear within days. Bones dissolve or break. Entire forests decay without a trace. Even human artifacts, if buried in wet soil or acidic environments, vanish in a few centuries. Deep time is relentless in its erasure. The vast majority of Earth's biological and cultural output has been swallowed before reaching us. Visually, it's like walking along a beach at dusk, watching the tide erase footprints almost instantly. You know people walked there moments ago, yet nothing remains, only a smooth, reflective sheet of sand tracing the fading light. And from that vanishing surface rises a philosophical murmur. Perhaps the world is not meant to hold on to memory. Perhaps memory itself is a fleeting privilege of the living. Another quiet sorrow emerges when considering the possibility that Earth may have hosted forms of intelligence that left no recognizable traces. Not intelligence like ours, tool-using, symbol-creating, engineering-driven, but something more delicate, quiet and transient. Something that did not shape landscapes or build durable structures, yet still felt, thought, and knew itself. Scientifically, examples of non-technological intelligence today include dolphins, whales, elephants, octopuses, and many birds. These species exhibit complex communication, problem-solving, and social structures, yet their presence would be nearly invisible in the geological record. If similar beings existed tens of millions of years ago, we would find nothing but biological fragments indistinguishable from other species. Visually, such lost intelligences resemble shadows moving behind a curtain, movements you can sense but not see directly, passing quietly before dissolving into the darkness of deep time. And from those invisible movements comes a thought. Intelligence may not depend on permanence. It may simply be a brief flame touching the world before sinking back into silence. Another deep wistfulness arises when imagining the inner worlds of ancient creatures, the subjective experience that no fossil could ever capture. Sensation, curiosity, fear, playfulness, even small moments of wonder might have existed in beings long forgotten. These experiences, ephemeral and unrecorded, filled the world with meaning that vanished alongside the creatures who felt them. Scientifically, Neurobiology suggests that many animals have rich emotional and perceptual lives. Even insects display surprising complexity, including memory and problem-solving. If ancient ecosystems hosted minds with similar depth, their inner experiences would be utterly absent from the geological archive. Visually, these lost inner worlds feel like lanterns flickering inside vast silent forests, each one shining brightly for a moment before going out forever. And from that imagery arises a realization. The world has known countless forms of awareness, each leaving nothing behind but the faint possibility that they once shimmered under ancient skies. Another melancholy insight comes when confronting the fragility of meaning across deep time. Concepts, languages, myths, songs, everything that gives shape to inner life must be transmitted across generations to survive. If a species dies out or its culture collapses, its entire mental universe disappears instantly. No rock preserves songs, no fossil preserves stories. Scientifically, cultural transmission in animals is well documented. Birds teach songs, whales pass down migration routes, primates teach tool use. But if these cultures vanish, nothing physical remains to hint at them. Their existence is measured only in living memory, which disappears with the last individuals who carry it. Visually, it feels like hearing the final notes of a melody carried away on the wind, notes that linger in the air for a moment before dissolving into dusk. And from that dissolving melody comes a reflection. Culture is the most fragile substance that has ever existed on Earth. Another quiet ache appears when contemplating the possibility of civilizations rising and falling unnoticed. Even if an ancient civilization achieved technology, its physical presence might fade long before geological processes erase the evidence. Cities crumble quickly without maintenance, forests reclaim structures, weather grinds stone into dust. Within a few thousand years, most traces of architecture vanish. Scientifically, modern abandoned cities show rapid decay. Metal rusts, concrete cracks, roads break apart. Within centuries, nature dominates. Within millennia, only faint geological disturbances remain. Millions of years would erase even the deepest foundations. Visually, it feels like watching a photograph fade, the image losing contrast, edges softening, colors dissolving until nothing remains but blank paper. And from that fading image arises a thought. Permanence is an illusion supported only by the short span of human memory. Another layer of introspective sadness comes from recognizing that the universe offers no guarantee that intelligence will endure. Even if intelligence emerges repeatedly across cosmic or planetary history, it may seldom last long enough to intersect with another. Species rise or flourish briefly and disappear. Curiosity, creativity, and awareness may flicker throughout time, but rarely overlap. Scientifically, this is known as the Fermi paradox and its variations. The idea that civilizations may be common but short-lived, separated by vast distances and eras. Intelligence might be like fireflies in a dark field, many lights, but all blinking at different moments, never meeting. Visually, it resembles a night sky where stars blink on and off asynchronously. Tiny sparks that never align, each shining alone against an infinite backdrop. And from that cosmic solitude comes a philosophical murmur. Existence may be rich with minds, yet lonely in time. Another gentle sorrow appears when considering that Earth's deep past was rich in ecological marvels we will never see. Entire forests with alien plant life, oceans filled with creatures of strange symmetry, skies populated by forms that vanished without leaving descendants. These worlds lived, changed, and ended without ever being observed by human eyes. Scientifically, paleobotany and paleontology reconstruct fragments of these worlds. giant fungi dominating land before trees evolved, dragonfly-like insects with meter-wide wings during high oxygen periods, coral reefs built by extinct lineages. But these reconstructions are incomplete, partial silhouettes of ecosystems that once thrived. Visually, they resemble paintings where the majority of the canvas has been torn away. Only small pieces of color remain to hint at the grandeur of the original scene. And from that torn canvas arises a quiet truth. The world has held beauty we will never know. Another layer of melancholy settles when acknowledging that the universe itself does not preserve meaning. Stars burn, planets form and dissolve, galaxies collide, and all of it unfolds without any intrinsic narrative. Meaning exists only where minds create it. If ancient minds shaped meaning long before ours, their stories dissolved into matter without a trace. Scientifically, entropy guarantees the gradual dispersal of information across time. Complex structures break down into simpler forms. Memory, identity, and story do not survive this process. Only the raw physical material persists, recycled endlessly. Visually, it feels like watching a sand mandala, intricate, colorful, full of intention, being swept away into a swirling cloud of dust. And from that sweeping motion comes a reflection. Beauty is transient, but its transience is part of what makes it precious. Another contemplative ache forms when you realize that consciousness might not be rare, only fragile. It may spark in countless places and eras, yet remain too delicate to endure geological upheaval, cosmic accidents, or evolutionary pressures. Minds might bloom like wildflowers after rain, only to wither when conditions shift. Scientifically, intelligence requires metabolic cost, ecological opportunity, and stability. Small disruptions, climate changes, habitat loss, competition can extinguish cognitive lineages easily. The fact that human intelligence survived long enough to shape the world is remarkable, not inevitable. Visually, it resembles a tiny flame flickering in the wind, glowing bravely, yet vulnerable to the slightest gust. And from that flicker comes a quiet understanding. Consciousness is not a destination, but a delicate event. All these reflections, the fragility of culture, the silence of fossils, the erasure of memory, the loneliness of intelligence, gather into a deep, soft melancholy, not despair, but a tender recognition of how precious awareness truly is. It makes the present moment feel both small and immense, like standing on the edge of an ancient ocean that has washed countless stories away. And as that feeling settles gently into you, another question begins to rise, not about the past, but about the meaning of our own brief existence within a world shaped by so many forgotten dawns. There is a gentle calm that arrives after wandering through so much uncertainty, a sense that the unknown is not something to fear, but something to sit beside. When you lean into the possibility that Earth may hold stories older than our own, the fear dissolves and is replaced by a quiet gratitude. Gratitude that we exist now, in this brief moment, able to contemplate questions whose answers were swallowed by time. The unknown becomes less a void and more a soft horizon. Scientifically, this calm arises when you understand how normal it is for planets to forget. Geological cycles, erosion, plate tectonics, and atmospheric changes ensure that only fragments survive from ancient eras. What seems mysterious or missing is simply part of Earth's natural rhythm, a rhythm shared by planets across the universe. Mars has lost most of its atmosphere. Venus resurfaced itself with volcanic plains. Even the Moon bears countless scars. Forgetting is written into the fabric of planetary evolution. Visually, this understanding feels like watching waves smooth the edges of pebbles, not erasing their uniqueness, but softening them into something that fits naturally within the shoreline's quiet rhythm. And from that smoothing comes a reflection. Forgetting is not loss, it is transformation. Another comforting realization comes from recognizing that uncertainty expands the space of imagination. When the geological record leaves gaps, it invites us to explore what might have happened there. These possibilities are not wild fantasies, but respectful thought experiments grounded in science. They remind us that curiosity is the natural response to an incomplete world. Scientifically, the Silurian Hypothesis, the idea that an earlier technological civilization might have existed, is not presented as fact, but as a framework to test our assumptions. It helps scientists refine methods for detecting technosignatures, both on Earth and beyond. By considering what evidence would remain of our own civilization millions of years from now, researchers develop tools for studying exoplanets and atmospheric chemistry. Visually, this hypothesis feels like opening a window in a dark room, not to reveal a definitive view, but to let in a breeze that stirs the curtains gently. And from that gentle stirring comes a thought. Sometimes questions matter more than answers. Another comforting truth appears when you realize that our own existence is part of the same fragile, improbable chain. Every species alive today represents a long lineage of survival through countless catastrophes. The fact that consciousness bloomed again here now suggests that the universe is patient with complexity. Minds may vanish, but they also reappear whenever conditions favor them. Scientifically, convergent evolution shows how certain traits of vision, flight, communication emerge independently in different lineages. Intelligence, too, may be a recurring solution. If it has arisen before, it may arise again. If it has been lost, it may return. Nature is not stingy with creativity. Visually, this resilience resembles wildflowers pushing through cracks in old stone walls, gentle, persistent, reminding us that life seeks expression in every era. And from those small blossoms comes a whisper. Awareness is a pattern the universe seems willing to rediscover. Another calming perspective arises when contemplating how deeply connected we are to the ancient past. The atoms in your body were forged in stars long before Earth formed. The calcium in your bones once drifted in ocean currents. The iron in your blood was created in the heart of a supernova. In a literal sense, you are built from the remnants of forgotten worlds. Scientifically, nucleosynthesis explains how heavier elements are produced in dying stars and distributed through space. These elements condensed into planets, oceans, and eventually life. This cosmic recycling ensures that even if civilizations or species vanish, their material persists, reshaped into new forms. Visually, this feels like holding a fragment of an ancient mosaic, broken, reassembled, and carried through time until it becomes part of a new image. And from that mosaic comes a reflection. Nothing is ever truly lost, it only changes shape. Another soft piece arrives when you consider that meaning is something we create, not something we inherit from the universe. If ancient civilizations existed, their stories may have faded, but the meaning they experienced was still real. Our stories, too, will one day dissolve, but their value lies in being lived, not preserved. Scientifically, entropy ensures that information spreads and structures break down. Yet within those constraints, pockets of order arise: ecosystems, organisms, consciousness. These pockets create moments of meaning before dispersing again. This cycle does not diminish the significance of those moments, it defines them. Visually, it feels like watching fireflies blinking in a dark field. Each light is brief, but the beauty lies in its briefness, not in its endurance. And from those blinking lights comes a philosophical murmur. Impermanence gives weight to experience. Another comfort blooms when you imagine how many times life has reinvented itself. Earth is not a single story, but a tapestry woven from countless attempts, some long, some fleeting, all contributing to the richness of the planet. If something intelligent lived long ago, its existence enriches the world simply by having occurred. Scientifically, biodiversity studies show that evolutionary innovation accelerates after major extinctions. New forms burst into existence, filling niches left empty. Life does not mourn what came before, it builds anew from whatever remains. Visually, this resembles artisans repairing an old quilt, stitching new patterns where the fabric has worn away, keeping the tapestry alive through change. And from that quilt comes a thought. Creation and erasure are partners, not opposites. Another calming insight arrives when you accept that curiosity itself is evidence of connection. The fact that we even wonder about ancient civilizations means we feel rooted to Earth's long past. We sense the weight of time stretching behind us, touching lives we will never know. Scientifically, cognitive science suggests that humans are wired to seek patterns, stories, and meaning. This capacity links us intimately with the natural world. Our questions are part of the planet's ongoing attempt to understand itself through conscious beings. Visually, curiosity resembles a lantern held close while exploring a vast cave, small, gentle, yet powerful enough to illuminate new passages. And from that lantern comes a whisper. Seeking is a form of belonging. Another layer of peace arises when realizing that whatever came before us, if anything did, was not our competition. It is simply another thread in a tapestry older than mountains. Their disappearance does not threaten us. It enriches the depth of our story. We are part of a continuum, not a race. Scientifically, paleoanthropology shows how many human species coexisted. Homo erectus, Neanderthals, Denisovans, each with unique cultures. None invalidated the others. Their stories intertwine with ours, shaping our genetics and our place in the world. Visually, this resembles tree rings layered around one another, each ring marking a season, none diminishing the others. And from those rings comes a quiet understanding. Every lineage adds a layer to the world's memory. Another soft realization appears when contemplating that the mysteries of Earth remind us to remain humble. Our species is young, our knowledge incomplete. But that incompleteness is not a flaw, it is an invitation. The universe is vast, and we are just beginning to open our eyes. Scientifically, cosmology shows that we occupy a thin sliver of time within an expanding universe filled with unknowns. Every discovery deepens our sense of scale. Yet humility is not discouraging, it is grounding. Visually, humility feels like standing beneath a night sky. Small, yes, but included in something immeasurably beautiful. And from that inclusion comes a final reflection. Being a small part of something grand is its own kind of comfort. All these perspectives, cosmic connection, evolutionary resilience, geological forgetting, and the gentle persistence of curiosity, gather into a peaceful recognition. Whether or not ancient civilizations existed before us, their absence of evidence does not diminish the wonder of imagining them. It reminds us that existence is precious, fragile, and endlessly renewed. And as that quiet recognition settles, something warm begins to rise, a sense that the exploration you've just taken is not only about the past, but about finding your place within the long, continuous story of life on Earth. There is a gentle stillness in reaching this moment, as if the long journey through deep time has wrapped itself around you like a soft dusk. You've wandered through eras older than mountains, sifted through fragments of forgotten worlds, and listened to the Earth's quiet breathing beneath layers of memory and silence. And now, as everything settles, the unknown no longer feels like an empty void. It feels like a vast, peaceful space, a horizon that stretches beyond sight, inviting wonder rather than fear. Throughout this exploration, we followed whispers rather than answers. We traced the lines of vanished oceans, eroded mountains, lost species, and the faintest chemical echoes left in stone. None of these clues proclaimed certainty, yet together they revealed something deeper, that Earth is far older, more complex, and more mysterious than our brief existence can fully grasp. In that realization lies a strange comfort, the knowledge that we are part of something ancient and ongoing. And as you reflect on that scale, you may notice a soft shift inside yourself. The possibility of civilizations older than our own no longer feels like a threat to our story, but an expansion of it. Whether any such civilizations existed or not, imagining them reminds us of the delicate impermanence of life, the resilience of nature, and the quiet persistence of curiosity. We are one flicker in a sequence of flickers, part of a universe that has been glowing for billions of years. In that awareness, the boundaries between past and present grow thinner. You begin to sense how deeply connected you are to everything that came before, the ancient stars that forged your atoms, the forgotten landscapes beneath the continents, the lost species whose evolution shaped your existence. You are not separate from this world's long history. You are a continuation of it, carrying forward the light of countless forgotten dawns. And as that light settles into your thoughts, a calm acceptance emerges. It becomes clear that meaning doesn't depend on duration or permanence. Meaning arises in the very act of wondering, exploring, imagining possibilities, and allowing yourself to feel awe. If ancient minds once gazed at their own skies, their awe was no less real than ours. If they left no trace, their experience still mattered, not to history but to themselves. The universe, after all, is not a storyteller. It does not keep records out of sentiment or pride. It simply allows moments to exist, burn brightly, and fade. But we, as conscious beings, are the ones who turn those moments into stories. We're the ones who look at the night sky and feel the weight of silence as something meaningful. That act, the simple human act of feeling wonder, is what makes our brief existence profound. And maybe that is the quiet gift hidden inside the mystery we explored. Not answers, not revelations, but perspective. A reminder that uncertainty is not emptiness, but spaciousness. That the unknown is not a threat, but a soft room where curiosity can breathe. That our story, though small, adds a new verse to a song the Earth has been humming for billions of years. A song of renewal, transformation, and gentle forgetting. So as this journey draws to a close, allow yourself to feel the warmth of belonging to this planet, to its ancient past, and to the long chain of minds who wandered before you. Your curiosity is part of that lineage now. Your thoughts have joined the quiet flow of the Earth's ongoing memory, drifting gently like light across calm water. If this quiet exploration brought you peace or sparked your imagination, I'm grateful we shared this moment. And if you feel like leaving a trace of your presence here, softly, naturally, you're welcome to tell me in the comments where you are listening from tonight and what time it is there. Your small note becomes part of the constellation of voices that gather around these stories. And now, as the night settles fully, may you carry a sense of calm with you, a reminder that you are part of a universe vast enough to hold every mystery, yet intimate enough to cradle each passing thought. Whatever else fades with time, the quiet wonder you felt here remains yours to keep, glowing softly long after the journey ends.